planning to become a professional poet? That was something you wanted to do professionally?
So I thought I wanted to be a college English professor. I never had any interest in business, or so I thought. And so I went and got my master's in creative writing with every intention of going on to get my PhD, being in that university context, wearing tweed jackets with suede elbow patches, and probably imagine myself, smoking a pipe and shepherding young minds, right? But I was 1 year into my master's program, and I realized that this is not for me. And I did finish my degree, but ended up getting a job at a marketing agency. So I still do write poems, but I would not say that I'm a professional poet.
That sounds interesting. What about getting your master's didn't you like? At what
So
point did you think, okay, what was it that made you decide it wasn't for you?
I think I was naive. I think I thought that if you are a college English professor, then you get to spend your time reading and writing and teaching. And like I said, I was naive, and I quickly found out that a large amount of my time was going to be consumed with grading pretty mediocre papers and first
Oh,
year composition papers specifically. And beyond that, there was a whole lot of like lesson preparation and, having to put together syllabi and going to meetings and being on committees and sometimes even having to manage the politicking that can happen in certain
yeah,
university settings. And I thought, whoa, like I'm spending the majority of my time on things that I really don't care about, and the minority of my time on the things that originally attracted me to this, path through life. And so even though I still love reading, writing, and teaching, I decided it was best for me to actually leave academia. And so that's what I did.
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of red tape, and sounds like it's very similar to teaching in elementary, high school.
I
Yeah, it's
did
very
for a
similar.
year. I taught high school English for 1 year and
Oh, you did?
before. Mhm. That came before I went back to school to get my master's. And I mean that love of teaching has been consistent. Love of mentoring too. I mean, my best conversations with students happened outside of the classroom, but eventually you have to make a decision about do I love how I'm spending 80% of my time, or do I only love how I'm spending 20% of my time? And if you only love how you're spending 20% of your time, it may be time for a career change.
Yes, yes, I agree. I think you really have to enjoy what you're doing at some point. No, I think you have to love what you're doing, especially writing. I just got back into writing after doing podcast marketing, which I wasn't enjoying.
Hmm.
I thought I would enjoy it, but then it's not, and there's no original content creation when you're
Hmm.
doing that. You're just playing with somebody else's words, so it's not something I enjoy. So I wanted to ask you, so how was it? Did you make many mistakes when you started freelancing? You started working in marketing and then you went off as a freelancer?
So I finished the program. Within a couple of months, I had gotten a job at that marketing agency I mentioned. And then 6 months after that, the US economy went, "Phew." So that was,
Yeah.
I guess that had started happening even before. So in 2008, 2007, 2008, the recession began to emerge. And then I
Mhm.
got laid off from my agency job in April 2009, which was about 6 months after I started. So I didn't start freelancing through this big act of courage or boldness. I had no choice. I was desperate. I got laid off, needed to pay my bills, had not been careful with my money, so I did not have savings to speak of. And so I was highly motivated to figure out freelancing. But you asked about mistakes. I made all of the mistakes. I did not have a background in business. I had never taken a marketing class. I was a poet. Like, what did I know about putting together a contract, or, best practices with invoices or proposals, or even pricing and the difference between a service that you offer and packaging up an outcome as like an attractive offer, right? So I didn't know hardly anything. I was good at learning, and I was also aware when I had made a mistake. I could say, "Ooh, that was painful. I have a bruise. I don't want to get the same type of bruise again. What do I want to do differently next time?" And so I kind of stumbled and failed my way forward. I would say in those early years, but I still continue to stumble and fail my way forward, honestly.
Yeah. So in the beginning, you didn't know what you wanted to write about with freelancing, and then you decided to become a coach for other freelancers at some point.
So so I think we're always in this process of understanding our full capacity. Like, what am I good at? And we have this identity, and my identity was poet and creative writer. And I did not necessarily think, oh, I'm a poet and creative writer and entrepreneur and freelancer and lifelong learner. And also, I like making money. I like money. I'm good at making money. I have a knack for making money with creativity, with these creative skills that I have. But over time, our awareness or our understanding of our talents expands. And I was probably 6 or 7 years into freelancing when I started to take stock and look around and say, well, I have been able to make more money. I've been able to attract better clients. I have been able to sell bigger projects. I've been able to raise my effective hourly rate. Why is that? What were the contributing factors? And this is actually where my love of teaching came in handy, because when I learn something, I'm like a little kid and I immediately like want to turn around and show it to somebody. My
Yeah,
wife and I have 3 kids, and actually, like, you
got
know,
3 years. I know.
we have 3 kids, right? And so it's like when one of them draws something, the first thing they want to do is,
Oh, that's so cute.
like, let me show it to you. Let me come show it to you. And so I
Oh,
get
yeah.
I get that way when I learn something. And so I didn't really set out to be a freelance business coach. I just started sharing what had worked for me. And honestly, especially with my early blog posts, half the time I felt like I was just pointing out what was obvious. And sometimes I'm sure I was, but there are things to you that are obvious that are not obvious to other people, including me. There are things that are obvious to
Mhm.
me that are not obvious to other freelancers. especially those who are just getting into freelancing. Maybe they're fresh out of art school or a liberal arts program. They have the same blind spots I had. And so if someone who's been in the freelance game longer says, hey, by the way, your belief that quality will always speak for itself, it's just not true, because
No.
some of your clients won't have the same sensitivity to quality that you do. And so make sure that your prices reinforce your positioning by communicating the quality of the work that you do. If people pay more, they usually assume that what they're getting is in fact better. So if you do good work, but you're charging low prices, that discrepancy is
Yeah.
probably attracting the wrong clients. And like those sorts of things are obvious to me circa 2014, 2015, but are less apparent to newish freelancers, right? And so that's how I got into coaching, is just sharing what I was learning.
Yeah, that's a great way to learn the business yourself as a freelancer, and then you're able to teach other freelancers. And that's probably the big problems that freelancers face, is how to price their services. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all about confidence too, I think. Are you confident putting up high prices for your services, but the meet the high prices
Mm-hmm.
also, of course, but it is about so, and so
Mm-hmm.
then you inevitably gonna have people that say to you, well, you're too expensive. And I think
Mm-hmm.
writing and generally speaking, people don't value writing, and they never put a high price on it, depending on
Mm-hmm.
the company or person, one seeking your services. I just feel like it's not as valued. It's kind of like teaching. You don't make a
Mm-hmm.
lot of money in teaching. You don't make a lot of money as a writer unless you're very lucky, I feel. But I know that you can make six figures as a freelance writer. I know it's possible. I've seen it. And I myself have not made six figures as a freelance writer.
Mm-hmm.
But it happens. But it's not as common for freelance
It,
writers to make six figures.
well, I mean, I think in
So why
any
do you
discipline,
think that is?
I think there's always like that distribution with any craft or discipline or profession. Like you have some lawyers who make more than other lawyers. You have some school teachers, even though teaching maybe as on the whole doesn't have a reputation for paying well, right? There are, in the overall distribution, there are people over here who will make more money as teachers. And so I think as a freelance writer, you take a step back and you say, okay, some writers won't make a lot of money, some will. The writers who are making a lot of money, what are they thinking and doing differently? And that was one of the questions I started to ask. That was probably late 2015. What are six-figure freelancers thinking and doing differently? And what I noticed, and you may have been on this journey yourself, what I noticed is that a lot of them were doing the same things. So it wasn't like the career of this freelance designer over here who's making six figures. It wasn't like her career or the choices she was making were markedly different from this freelance writer over here making six figures. When you overlap them, you're like, wow, I see some commonalities here. One of those commonalities is typically specialization, right? So you have horizontal specialization, which is which niche or industry have you chosen? I have found that a lot of freelance writers who aren't satisfied with what they're making have chosen niches or industries where the clients in that niche or industry just don't place a high value on writing and are not going to
Yeah.
pay a premium for writing, right? And again, this is true of different types of law. This is true of um, different medical procedures, right? If you're a doctor and you're looking at all the procedures you could perform, some of them pay well and some don't, right? So if you take a step back and you look at what six-figure writers are doing, you might realize that, wow, like the ones who seem to be doing really well are actually in a fairly small group of niches or industries. So you improve your chances of making a lot more money as a writer if you start fishing in a different pond, right? And then that's horizontal specialization, which niche. But then you also have to think about vertical specialization too. There are certain forms
Yeah.
of writing, like copywriting typically pays a lot better than content writing.
Mhm.
And you could probably do both. But if we're talking about conversion focused sales copy versus writing social media posts, well, the conversion copy,
Mhm.
it's going to pay better. And I think that the question is why? And it's because it's closer to the money. So, one piece of advice I give all types of freelancers beyond writers is there some form of what you do that is closer to the money? And I can share a link with you afterwards where I've like written more about this, but something like case studies or copywriting for a pitch deck, those are closer to the money than
Right.
blog content. So, yeah, just back to the original point, when you think about what six-figure freelancers are thinking and doing differently, a lot of them have specialized and then they have figured out how to dial in offers that have a high perceived value, and therefore clients are going to be willing to pay more for them.
Right. That leads me to the next question about six-figure freelancers. What are the 6 Ps that all six-figure freelancers follow?
So the
I
six
haven't I
P's,
haven't written down the case, so that you haven't don't have them
uh,
memorized.
well, I talk about it all the time. I probably mumble them in my sleep, right? My wife's like, "Shut up about the six P's already." But going back going back to that idea of like, okay, if you sort of overlap the careers of six-figure freelancers, what are they doing? What do they have in common? The first one is positioning. That's the first P. Second one is packaging. So positioning, specialization, your niche, your markets, your industries, right? Packaging is services and offers aren't the same thing. A service is food preparation. An offer is how would you like a romantic dinner for two on the beach, right? Food preparation may not have high perceived value, but this once in a lifetime memory to celebrate your wedding anniversary or whatever, wow, people will pay a lot more for that. So, what messaging are you using to communicate your offers? Do you have a strong value proposition, right? Is it really easy for people to understand the ROI or the value of working with you? So that's the packaging. Then obviously pricing. And I mentioned before that like your pricing either reinforces the perceived value of what you do or it doesn't. Uh, One of my little teaching tools is Timex versus Rolex. Like functionally, a Timex watch with a quartz movement, functionally, it tells better time than a Rolex with a mechanical movement. But which type of watch has the higher perceived value. So conscientious freelancers are adamant about the functional benefits of the work that we do, but we sometimes forget that our clients are emotional, and they actually sometimes need to pay a higher price in order to place higher value on the work that you do. So your pricing is a really, really important part of your positioning and your brand, right? So that's the third P. Next is pipeline. I did not have a consistent pipeline for years, right? I just was not consistent with my marketing. So if there's one that really gives freelancers leverage, it's consistent marketing, or what I would call a morning marketing habit, right? P number 5 is psychology, mindset. We can't outperform our beliefs. You mentioned confidence earlier. That one is huge, right? You're just not going to step out and take certain calculated risks if you're paralyzed of, you have this fear of failure, right? Final P is process. So positioning, packaging, pricing, pipeline, psychology, and process. Okay. I did, in fact, remember them. I'm kind of proud of myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Where did the 6 P's come from? Did someone create that?
I created it. I really just
Yeah, I
needed
thought so, but I was looking into it and I thought the 6 P's. I googled the 6 P's freelancers. I thought it seemed to start with you. So you created it?
I needed a way to remember what I call levers, right? When you think about a lever, it's like a force multiplier. It gives you an advantage. And that idea earlier of like, what are 6-figure freelancers doing differently? Once you find something important, that doesn't mean it's easy to remember. And so, especially as I was needing to teach some of these concepts to other people, I just kept on coming back to that image of a boulder in the ground and a crowbar, and how if you have this crowbar, which is a lever, it gives you a mechanical advantage and you're able to just get much better results with less effort. And I really do think some freelancers out there are getting better leverage. They're getting better results with less effort because they focus on specific areas of their businesses, right? Like at this point, I've been a copywriter for over 13 years, and I could take another course on copywriting. I could like raise the quality of my copywriting by like some incremental percentage, right? But even if I got, let's say, 20% better as a copywriter, does that mean that I would raise my income by 20%? And the answer is no. In part because our clients, like my clients, would they even be able to recognize that my copywriting was 20% better? And the other way to think about it is, okay, even if I get that much better as a copywriter, does that necessarily mean I'm more effective in serving my clients? Those of us who really care about craft and quality, we falsely assume that becoming better at the craft always means serving our clients better. And that's just not the case. Sometimes what matters to them more than getting the very best quality is getting something on time without stress, right? So it's like if you are sick and you go to like an urgent care clinic and they tell you that you have the flu, in that moment, are you sitting there thinking, am I getting the very best health care in the world right now? Or are you thinking they gave me a test, the test came back positive for the flu, now they're going to write me a prescription to give me an antibiotic. They'll call that into my pharmacy. After I leave here, I'll drive to my pharmacy and I have gotten what I needed out of this whole experience, right? And so I think a lot of freelancers are so focused on like improving their skills and trying to be like the very best provider they can possibly be, and that's honorable. But meanwhile, our clients are like, yeah, I just need you to fix my problem, which is
Right.
I need you to write a prescription for an antibiotic so I can get this flu knocked out, so I can get back to the other things that I really need to be doing, right? And so I know that was a long-winded description, but are you spending most of the effort in your freelance business on the things that give you maximum leverage, or are you spending most of your effort on things that really aren't going to move the needle in terms of income and lifestyle? It's a good question to ask.
Yeah, there's a lot of distractions. You make a good point about copywriting. So copywriting is all about sales. So I don't think that your client, if you're a copywriter for a client, I don't think they really care about the quality as long as they get the sales.
That does
As long
it
as
get
it
the
works.
job done? Yeah,
Mm,
it's
You
you
have to.
know,
I think you have to focus most on your marketing. You're marketing more than you're writing. So
well,
you
you
have to
can
get your.
have we can produce writing that is tactically sound. The grammar was correct. It was well formatted, but it was strategically unsound because we missed the primary need that the target audience has, or the primary problem that they have, and they would like to see that problem go away. So you wrote this beautiful copy that is tactically sound, but the copy could have been very messy, and as far as copy goes, not very good. But if you had nailed that one problem and made people feel seen and understood, then they would have opted in, or they would have bought the thing, or whatever, right? So it's just another way of thinking about growth. And when a lot of us are selling our creative skills and there's limited time in the day, so what do you focus on if you want to raise your income? It can be less comfortable to focus on our own marketing or our own business strategy than to like make sure that our writing is grammatically correct, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you should always look at upskilling if you can, if you have time for that. But marketing, I know, is a pain for a lot of freelance writers. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it can be hard to put ourselves out there, but it's
Mm-hmm.
part of having the freelance writing business. What would you, of all the freelancers that have come to you for coaching or advice, what are the most common problems that they have when they come to you for help?
A lot of them are overextended. I remember one writer, she had actually cracked six figures in 2021, and she said, and I quote, "What's the point of all that extra money if I'm too busy to enjoy it?" And
Yeah.
another writer said, you know, "I just had my first $20,000 month and it nearly killed me." So it's not just about making more money, it's about that sort of lifestyle income balance or sweet
Right.
spot. Because at a certain point, if you're only ever pursuing more income, more money, you're probably sacrificing your physical health, your mental health. And so a lot of what I'll end up doing early on with coaching clients is more or less helping them opt out of hustle culture. Like, you've believed those messages that, like, oh, I need to work harder. And sometimes that's true. It's like, if you're only putting 1 or 2 hours a day into your freelance business, it's it's going to be hard for you to see that kind of growth that you want, right? Um, so we'll end up talking about hiring a virtual assistant. We will end up talking about standardizing processes. We will talk about improvising less, working from templates and cheat sheets and checklists more, having that well-defined process, not to make delivering a certain project automatic, but to make it much easier and more streamlined. We will talk about time management and workflow and some of the more tactical things like theming, like assigning a specific theme to specific days of the week, you know, paying attention to your energy. If your best energy is in the morning, don't do administrative work in the morning, save that until the afternoon. Sometimes I will help people come up with a plan for actually spending their freedom, right? We talk about freelancing and we talk about lifestyle, and then we end up working all the time. And it's like, hold on, like, this is missing the point. Do you need to start planning a bucket list trip? Do you need to start thinking about taking Friday afternoons off? Do you need to start thinking about firing your most difficult clients? Even if the money is consistent, what is that costing you in terms of enjoyment of your life and your work? So a lot of what we do early on is just coming up with what I would call like a custom business roadmap so that people can find that income and lifestyle sweet spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think hustle culture really has to go. No, you see a lot of posts on LinkedIn. I don't know if you've seen them, but there's a lot of talk about hustle culture. I got up early. I got up at 5:30 in the morning. I took an ice bath, an ice shower, and then I went to the gym, and then I went all kinds of crap, really. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think like that can make sense for people who are in a certain season of life, right? But and I mentioned this earlier, I have 3 young children. Um, I'm married. My wife has a business too. We, for better or worse, live in an old house, and she's got a lot of needs, right? And so we're in this stage of life where there are many demands on my time. And when I was younger and single with no kids, and all of my time was my own, maybe I would have had a different work style, right? But I think what's true is that you find a work style that is moving you forward closer and closer to your long-term goals. And that is how you sort of measure your success, as opposed to saying, here's this sort of template that we've received from culture at large. Does that really serve you? And truthfully, I think that template serves no one. Like, I stumbled across some statistics about life-threatening illness in startup founders. And they're like, I could dig them up, but it was talking about how the rates of mental illness, depending on the type of mental illness, it's much, much higher amongst entrepreneurs. The same goes with like hypertension, cancer, um, various forms of like cardiac or cardiovascular disease. So the stress is this
Oh,
exacerbating influence, right? So if a certain style of work can quite literally kill you, those of us who want long and fruitful lives need to take a step back and say, I don't think it's worth it.
yeah. The stress. I mean, the constant, unrelenting stress is not good for our health in general. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're just throwing everything into it. But I've met
Hmm.
some entrepreneurs who have found a balance, maybe not the perfect balance, but they found something that works for them. So we're going on to 40 minutes now, so I wanted to ask you, I think people use these terms interchangeably. What's the difference between a freelancer and an entrepreneur or business owner?
So they are used interchangeably. I think freelancer is the way that you work. So you are self employed. Freelancer can mean full time or part time. Like if you have a job as a W 2 employee, you can also be a freelancer. If you have a freelance business, that also means that you are a small business owner. So, again, you can be a small business owner if you own a dry cleaners, or if you are a jeweler, or if you have a small software company, right? I think entrepreneur, it doesn't really have any meaning at all anymore. Usually these days, it seems like the connotation is that entrepreneurs are trying for scale. They're wanting to make something big, right? And that is juxtaposed with small business owners who are small and presumably content with staying small, right? But I do think now, even that meaning of like entrepreneur, well, when you translate that into solopreneur, that is like by definition small, like because one person can only do so much. So, yes, the terms are used interchangeably. I'm not sure there's truly a meaningful difference anymore, except that I would say you could be a freelancer and small business owner and entrepreneur all at the same time. Um, I will sometimes describe myself as a creative entrepreneur or an online entrepreneur. So even like the terms that you use sometimes have more to do with your business model than with the nature of the work that you do. So um, maybe it's just easier if I say I'm a consultant and I also have a media and education company, right? But it's confusing. I think certainly for people on the outside of this world we're in, they're like, I don't understand all the terms. You're like, we don't either. Come on in, right?
Yeah. So you mentioned your family and your work, and your wife also has a business. You have 3 young children. Have you managed to find that elusive work-life balance?
Um,
Do you
so
think it's
I'll
possible to have a work-life balance?
I I think in terms of like fruitfulness, like am I seeing the fruit in my life that I want to see? And that fruit would be financial stability. That fruit would be um like one of my weird metrics is, are my kids excited to see me? Now when they're teenagers, perhaps that will change, right? but is my relationship with them deep and intimate and meaningful and consistent, so that when I show up, they are excited to see me. So I think work-life balance, I think balance is a tough word because it can turn it into yet another type of performance, almost like there's this scale and you're stacking things up on either side of the scale to bring them into balance, when life is seasonal, and some
Mhm.
seasons you kind of have to work hard, or some seasons, despite how carefully you've planned. Like, I'll give you an example. I went to Mexico in July. I got giardia, and
Oh, you did?
I it
Oh,
was not it
it's
wasn't good. I would not recommend it as a weight loss strategy. Try green smoothies instead, right? Like, all of you people out there listening, avoid giardia if you can. But in August, my energy level went pew. And so my life was real balanced, right? It was really, really balanced because I just didn't have the energy that I used to have. So despite how carefully we plan, suddenly your life is unbalanced. So I'm like, what happens if you take the word balance out and instead you ask yourself, I think of it in terms of 5 buckets. Now, some people's buckets are going to be different, but mine are like health, faith, work and money, family, and probably learning, right? Am I every day spending time, putting time into the buckets that matter to me most? And it was a really good conversation between Ryan Holiday and James Clear, and they were talking about what does your
really?
ideal. It was on YouTube. It's great. But what does your ideal day look like? And maybe the goal should be just trying to put together a string of days that closely resemble your ideal day. And that has been really helpful to me because, like, again, work life balance. What kind of score can I give myself for yesterday? Was I balanced yesterday? And I'm like, no, like, what if instead I'm trying to put together a streak of days that closely resemble my ideal day? And my ideal day means I've put time into the things that matter most to me. And how much time I can put into each of those things will necessarily change one week to the next. But I just need to be cognizant of all 5 of those buckets, right?
Yeah, I love that. I have to look that up on YouTube. But I love that idea of putting enough time in each of those buckets for the things you care about the most. For me, it's very unbalanced. I'm more with my dogs and my mother. I'm a caregiver to my mother.
Mm,
And then my sister lives with us also. She's also sick. And so I spend more time with them than I do work, and it's very
hmm
unbalanced. So I think
hmm
I'm gonna have to message you and ask you about creating balance in my life because I so need it, that balance. But I enjoy being able to be with them. That's
hmm And
probably more important
yeah,
because they need me. And
well, and
but
even
I
some,
need to make money too, so it's very
so
unbalanced. But
yeah,
yes, the
and
word
it,
balance, I you're probably right about the word balance. You think of a scale, it's never going to be balanced, really. So something's always going to take more of your time.
and
Um,
and again, like, it's a fine word. Like, I don't want to beat up the word balance. It's more just like, does even the concept of work-life balance help you to accomplish or like achieve work-life balance. And for me, I'm like, I need, you know, other concepts help me get to the end goal more effectively than work-life balance. And I mean, the other side of it is like a lot of people would state as a goal that they want their work to be very fulfilling. So the whole concept of work-life balance falls apart if you really enjoy your work. So you need a better concept or better questions. And for me, the better question has been, is my work, which for the most part I really enjoy, crowding out other things that I enjoy equally or even more? And if my work is crowding out other things that I enjoy more, then I need to recalibrate. And so it needs to be like wholesome, and it needs to be healthy, and it needs to be sustainable. So it's not really about working less. It's about giving time to all the things that I value. And if I do need to sacrifice some of the things that I value, then those are very intentional sacrifices, not sacrifices that I'm making because I've never really examined these relationships, you know? So go pursue work that you enjoy, but don't let it crowd out other things that you enjoy too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something to think about. That's something to think about. So obviously something has to change.
Mm-hmm.
Work more, but still spending maybe not the same amount of time, but distributed differently.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Redistribution. I like that word. You said distributed. That's a good word. So it's less about balance and more about distribution.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're coming up to an hour now, Austin, and I've really enjoyed this chat with you. Do you have any quick tips for freelancers or business owners about anything?
So this is going to sound like common sense, but stick with me. Some of my best breakthroughs in my freelance business have come through two areas. Number one, noticing what's already working. So if there's a tip that I would leave behind, it would be double down on what's already working. And so even asking yourself that question, I try to ask myself that question every Sunday. What's going well? What's already working? Because if you look at like the last 20 or so projects that you got, freelance projects, and you say what's already working, you might notice that, oh, wow, I am getting inbound leads from LinkedIn. Spending time on LinkedIn is a good idea for me, right? So double down on what's already working is one area where I've had breakthrough in my business. The other area has been relationships. And so I normally just recommend, think of a couple people that you want to reconnect with or connect with for the first time. Could be someone you admire. It could be someone you collaborated with on a project in the past. But people often bring breakthrough. It's that one person who gets you in on a project that you never would have had a shot at, right? And oftentimes, when we're even needing to hire other freelancers for a project, we're sometimes reaching out to whoever is top of mind. So, one of the best things that you can do for your freelance business is just be good at keeping in touch with freelancers, right? So, speaking of doubling down on what's already working and relationships, right? Look back at all the clients that you've worked with in the last 2 years and just reach out and say, "Hi, I was thinking about you. How are things going?" It can be that very short one-line email. "Hi, I was thinking about you this morning. How are things going? It's been a while," right? That email has produced tens of thousands of dollars worth of freelance work for me. And it's the
Wow.
simplest thing in the world to just let people know that you were thinking about them. So make that list of clients from the last 2 years, reach out and say hi, and then, you know, let us know how it goes.
That's an excellent tip. I like that. I think I'm going to do that. Sounds
Would it
interesting.
surprise me if it turns up some opportunities for you? I need to do it too, right? I need to go
Oh,
do it too.
do you do it regularly? Is it something you do regularly? Or
I have a spreadsheet with a specific tab called Lead Tracker. I've tried to use CRMs over the years. When I was using one, I liked Pipedrive, but every Monday I just get into that Lead Tracker tab, and some people, if I would consider them an active lead, I'll track exactly when I followed up with them last. But even if people aren't an active lead, either because the project didn't work out in my favor or because we've completed it and there is not another project that they needed right away, either way, just having kind of like a contact list or Rolodex of your past clients all in one easy to access place that you can check once a week. And then just committing to sending 2 or 3 of those very casual, "Hey, I was thinking about you" type emails every week. That's just a really nice way to just nudge the flywheel and keep it going.
right. And then just have to keep reminding people about you because they will forget if they're busy, and everyone's
And
busy. So
it's not that you aren't memorable. It's just that our brains or our minds can only hold so many relationships at once. And I mean, I've been guilty of that. I mean, I
yeah,
have forgotten about clients, right? I don't know if you've ever gone back through invoices and you're like, "Why didn't I keep in touch with them?"
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
it's
exactly.
reasonable to think that people who gave you money in the past might be willing to give you money in the future, and then we just don't keep in touch with them. It's crazy, right? That we
Yeah,
don't keep in touch with our past clients. Why do we do that? Well, we lack process. So put a better process into place.
yeah. That should be part of our regular work process. Just checking in on that list.
That's right.
So I just wanted to say hi to a couple people. To hi Denise, thank you for being here with us this morning. I hope then. And then Wendy, you were talking about the 3 Ps. I think this was a while ago. I think you were talking about the 6 Ps at that point. So thank you, Wendy, for joining us this morning, and thank you everybody for being this morning with me and Austin. You can find all of Austin's information in the post below. So his website, his podcast, and Austin, I wanted to thank you for making your podcast accessible by providing blog posts and then transcript. It's very helpful. That's what I was doing before, encouraging accessibility in podcasts. But I'm working in accessibility now,
Hmm.
but for marketing and social media, not for podcasts. That could be
Hmm.
part of it still. But
Mm-hmm.
it became not fun for me. So
Mm-hmm.
that
You
was,
got to
but
pay
I learned a
attention to
lot.
that. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't have a whole lot of regrets when it comes to my career. It's just that constant sifting process to say, if I
yeah,
have a choice in the matter, I'd like to see the percentage of work that I enjoy the most grow? Like, or how I'm spending my time? Am I spending the majority of my time on work that I enjoy? And can I like grow that over time?
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of people do prefer reading over listening.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give the people the go to website options for podcasts, it's a good idea to have it in text, social media
Mm-hmm.
posts and clips and things like that. So you're
Mm-hmm.
doing really great on that front. So I applaud you for that. That's really great. And so
Thank you.
I still have to go back and check out the rest of your episodes. And are you going to have a new season?
That's my plan. January, getting back on the podcasting horse. I have a wonderful producer, and he
Oh,
makes
great.
podcasting relatively easy for me. I have a wonderful assistant who is responsible for a lot of the accessibility that you saw. So I've got good process and a good team in place, but um, I'm trying to slow down just a little bit going into the holidays, and then I'll start
Yeah.
ramping back up in the new year.
Yeah. That sounds like a good plan. Take some time during the holidays for yourself and your family,
That's right.
and then before in January.
That's right.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you so much for joining. I really enjoyed our chat, and I learned quite a bit from you this morning, so I appreciate
Well,
that. Thank you,
thank
everyone,
you
for
for the
joining us.
invitation.
You're welcome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. And have a great rest of your week. And have a fabulous guest. Angela Hollowell will be joining us. So be sure to tune in next week, Tuesday at the same time. Have a great week, everyone. Bye.